So the ambulatory care, when you look at that chapter 20 and 21, you'll be amazed at what it says. It basically says you got to follow what's in here, but it makes references to the business occupancy codes in many, many sections. In other words, the two of them are almost inherently linked together. So what we're going to do in this presentation is I've linked them together. We're going to be covering both ambulatory and business sort of at the same time because they are related. However, keep in mind that they're two separate chapters. Back under the 1985 code, that was in effect until the 2000 code was adopted, ambulatory care was a subsection of healthcare. Back in those days, Chapter 18 was called Chapter 12 and Chapter 19 was called Chapter 13. But in each one of those chapters, the -6 after each of those numbers dealt with ambulatory care. So that is a main criterion of thought as to why ambulatory care codes are so similar to healthcare, because it used to be part of healthcare. Comparing that to business occupancy, you can see, they don't have too many rules and regulations. They're way down there low on the totem pole of all of the different quantity of rules and regulations, relatively, simple to comply with. Only 8 pages in that entire, life safety code on the business occupancy. That's 8 pages for new and existing, Chapter 38 and 39. In a business occupancy, well, what in the world is that? A business occupancy is sort of like the catch-all. If it doesn't fit in anything else, surveyors just lump it in with a business occupancy. It's people who are capable of self-preservation. In other words, people who walk into that occupancy, they generally would be expected that if fire alarm bells rang, they know enough to say, I'm going to get out of here, or they know what to do to preserve themselves. But it also is a transaction of business, okay? And that's what is separating that from other things, other than a mercantile, of course. The transaction of business is a pretty broad category. It can mean almost anything, and in fact it does. That's on it. Keep in mind, CMS, they love to go back to that Chapter 18, 19 of mixed occupancies, and they basically told that whole thing about no inpatient. If you have an inpatient that has customary access to a space, and then that business is no longer a business, that business is now healthcare occupancy. What we're going to do when I'm going over these various slides is that we're going to be exploring all the requirements according to the life safety plan that you may have. So we'll get into that a little bit more. And we're covering the different occupancies. We'll be covering all of these different types in each one of the elements and the topics of it. Start with construction type on ambulatory and business occupancies. Now they do not have a chart, a nice little chart like they do in the healthcare occupancies. Instead, everything is covered in words. And so in words, the ambulatory care occupancy says that if you're a one-story building, you can have any type of construction you want, anything. Woods, you can have it out of concrete, you can have it out of steel, no requirements whatsoever. And under a business occupancy, lock, stock, and barrel, there's absolutely no requirements for construction type. Now that's a whole lot different than when you get into a healthcare occupancy that has that chart. And you'll also notice that for new and existing, same requirements, nothing different on it. Now, when you get to ambulatory, a little bit different thing, because if it's more than one story, now you have to have a protected type. In other words, whatever is holding it up structurally has to be protected from the effects of fire. And you can have an unprotected type, but it has to be fully sprinkled on that area. And if you have a basement, then you have to have at least 1 hour of a protection type for it. And they have that statement in ambulatory that if you have a non-combustible building, that is a type 1 or a type 2, that your interior partitions, your walls, and have to be made out of non-combustible area. This is the basis of many surveyors who shudder whenever they see wood in a building. And they also don't like it when people think that I can have fire-rated wood, because fire-rated wood, they think, is a limited combustible. Nope, the definition of limited combustible has to do with the potential heat value is on it. Here's a chart of potential heat values. Anything that is less than 3,500, that's considered limited combustible, but fire-treated wood, and Douglas fir is an example of it in here. That's way above the threshold for limited combustibles. So don't waste your time talking to an inspector saying that I've got fire rated anything in a non-combustible building. They will laugh at you and won't listen to you. That's all there is on structural requirements for a building construction.